Now in mid-June, I'm out here for my second trip of the summer on the section of Long Trail that I've adopted. This time with a grass whip, kind of beating back the brush. Couple reasons for this. Kind of the primary is that trying to prevent brush from rubbing up on your legs. It's kind of annoying to have, particularly because so often it can be wet, is like you want to keep, ideally, it's nice when hiking, you want to keep your legs dry when you're hiking. It's definitely not always possible. It's also, like some of these are nettles, or particularly like briary bushes, wild raspberry type stuff, is particularly good to get rid of and not have in the trail. But it's not as critical, this grass whipping, as a lot of the other trail maintenance. It's like you have to do it every year if it's going to help. Kind of the one long-term benefit is if there's little twiggy stuff, there isn't any like saplings, that will be beat out when you're doing this, and you won't have to come back and do it in the future with clippers once they get a little bit bigger and actually cause a problem. But it's not super critical. If this trail wasn't in as good of a shape, I wouldn't be doing this. I'd be focusing on other stuff that I felt was more important. But it's pretty fast to get through here with the grass whip, and do this. And it's like, yeah, it certainly takes effort. Grass whipping is a rather energy intensive thing to do well, and there's no real way of not doing it well. It just doesn't work if you don't do it well. But something that my parents, who have hiked the entire Long Trail, they really wanted me to get out and do when I adopted this section, because they know what it's like walking for a long time in wet stuff. Given that it's June, still pretty early on in the summer, not even late June, this brush has only in a few spots really gotten to the point where it actually would be causing a problem. Much of what I'm doing, and the other thing a grass whip can do is actually take out some small branches, is just kind of beating this back so that later in the summer, it's like in a month or 2 weeks, a month, whenever it is, that this becomes a problem. It's not going to become a problem because I've already dealt with it before it's getting to the point where it's causing issues. And particularly given that I don't expect to be out here for at least another month and a half, just given scheduling. One of the misnomers about a grass whip, I think, with the name is that I don't think they're actually that good at dealing with grass. Like, there's a little bit of grass here, which I am able to cut down some, but it's much better at dealing with like the ferns and other kind of herbaceous, just kind of not the grass. And if I was actually had a lot of grass to cut, which given that this is the woods, I don't, I would actually use a scythe instead, because that is really designed for cutting grass, and I think works way better, as opposed to this, which often grass just kind of gets knocked over by it rather than cut, particularly if you aren't giving it hard swings the first time you hit it. I also brought a saw along. This is mostly in replacement for my axe, with the sense that if I do encounter any trees, while this won't deal with a tree as large as I can get with my axe, it's a lot lighter and it can still do a decent amount. It's a big saw rather than like the small saw I brought along last time for stuff that was too small for my axe. But here I just found a branch that seemed particularly low hanging and felt like it should get dealt with because it was brushing the top of my head. When I'm along here grass whipping, I'm not just clearing back both sides of the trail always evenly. Most of the case I am, but in this spot, you see, like, coming up the trail, there's this rock here, but like most of the foot traffic is over here by this brush as opposed to this rock over by this brush. So in an effort to try to get people to follow where it looks like there's been a rock laid and kind of where I think the trail should be, and this maybe isn't the best example, I'm only going to cut this side just to make this try to make this the more appealing path. I'm not sure how much it's going to work because it's a not insignificant portion of hikers that seem to be really adverse to walking on rocks. So this is another spot where I think about what I'm doing with the grass whip. See this area, really, well, back here, yeah, it isn't too tight, but most of the time when I'm clearing wider than this. But I'm not clearing this area because this is a little bit of a muddy spot. And while, yeah, it might be good to reroute the trail so not having to walk through the little bit of the wet spot, I'm keeping this like hobble bush, and yeah, I would get rid of the briary thing because that's just annoying. I'm keeping like the hobble bush in, and yeah, eventually that will have to get cleared once it encroaches enough, but I'm trying to just use that to keep people on this narrow trail rather than like walking up through here. And so that's just kind of some of my thoughts of when I'm using the grass whip, is just limiting my use of it in places where I want to confine people on the trail or they might have desires to not be confined. Here's a tree I can use my saw on, though this isn't like blocking the trail. Its roots are broken and it's not doing well. It's not going to survive that much longer. So I think it's worth it to take it out of here just so that it doesn't fall and block the trail. And it's kind of an inconvenience right now because like the normal trail is getting into kind of head height. Like, yeah, you can get around it pretty easily, but it's not. Not really anything to do with it around here, so just chucking it off to the side. Made it to the end and turned around heading back, still carrying the grass whip rather than switching to one of my other tools. And that's because as I hike along, I occasionally see bits that I miss, and it's pretty quick and easy to just kind of take a whip in stride as you go and deal with it, rather than, it doesn't slow me down very much as opposed to kind of the relatively long amount of time that going through these patches in the first time is. That really does slow you down. It's also that I happen to know, having already hiked the trail I'm going on and paying attention to the parts, I don't really need those tools. Yeah, I'll use the hand hoe a little bit at the really far end where there's a drainage ditch that looks like it needs it, but for the most part this trail is pretty good. I don't need to deal with that stuff at this time, so might as well deal with the little bits and pieces with this and kind of make sure I get all of those down. While, yeah, I probably have 95 or more % of the little bits that need to be dealt with. If I'm with my goal of trying to make it so like water doesn't get on people's pant legs and that sort of stuff, get their shoes wet, that really has to be as pretty close to perfect as I can get it. Yeah, what I have currently will certainly help with the ticks, but to keep people's feet dry, that has to be almost everything, because one or two of these can, if it's a really like dewy morning or it's raining out, that can dump a lot of water onto you. Yeah, maybe me doing this is not really that useful because I only maintain a little more than 3 miles of trail, and I don't know how the people on either side of me maintain their sections, but I think doing this grass whipping, he's going a little bit above and beyond gold plating it. So I don't expect a trail maintainer to do that. So I don't know if it really helps, but given that there's a shelter in my section, maybe it allows people to keep dry feet for the first start of their hike some morning. Again, eating dinner in the shelter. It's a nice enough day today. It's sunny, but just like I could eat it anywhere, but it gives me a spot to stop and eat it. And I don't know, it just seems like a good stopping spot to do so. One thing I've actually done is, because I don't want to I want to have relatively easily accessible, fun to eat food here. And so I packed myself a lunch for this dinner, but I don't want to pack myself 2 lunches today. That just seems a little bit much. So I'll actually pack more, say, dinner type food for my lunch at work. And then because we have a microwave there, I'll have it hot, and that's nice, as opposed to here where I'd have to eat that cold, which I could do, but it just isn't as nice as eating food that I kind of expect to eat cold. The last little bit of this trail before I get back to my car is a field. See that I knocked back the grasses and brush, and this doesn't look like what I was doing. This looks like a mower. Somebody must have come in, I don't know, a week or 2 ago and mowed this, and I'm pretty sure it's a mower, not a weed whacker, because they stopped as soon as the ground got a little bit rough. So clearly I'm not the only one who thinks that having a clear place to walk without stuff on your getting on your ankles or pants, or even this would be up to my waist, is an important thing for trail work. And well, that probably will need to get mowed again this summer, given that it's grasses in a field, but certainly nice that they were able to do it, because this is some of the hardest stuff to do with the grass whip.